Alright, welcome back, welcome back. And in the last episode, we set up this guy right here, and what he can do, he can switch animation states. So if he wants to have his rifle out, or if he wants to have like a sword or something like that, or if he wants to be regular, that's what we did last time. Now on this one, we're going to actually put the weapon in his hand, and we're going to try to set up the weapons so that, like your gun can shoot things in the world. So that's what we're going to do, and let's go ahead and jump in because this might take a second. So the first thing that you need to do is make sure that all of your sword and your gun and all that stuff is inside the game. So if you don't have that in the game, go ahead and import it into the game, click and drag it into a folder, and this is what we're going to use. I've got a gun here, and I've got also a sword. I made this gun. I remember it took me a long time to make that. But the sword, also made the sword using dolly. So there we go. The sword is not as good looking as the gun, but oh well. Anyways, so I've got both of these in the game. They're not sized correctly, but who cares? We'll get that right. First thing that we need to do is we need to add a socket to our player's hand so that they can hold these things. So click on your third person character here. Really, we're going to click on their skeleton, but you can get to their skeleton through here. So click on the static mesh of this guy, and then you're going to see up in the top right a skeleton. So on the skeleton, what we want is in his right hand for there to be a socket. So right click on right hand and add a socket, and you'll see below it says right hand socket, and that's what we're gonna use that right there. So you can press save here and then go back to your third person character. Now we need to add the asset to this character. So go to viewport here, and we need to put that sword or whatever in his right hand. And so in order to make it look right, let's start off with the sword. So for under mesh, press add, and we're going to add a static mesh, and this is going to be the sword. Now the problem is, oh no, it's right, it's underneath the mesh. Make sure your sword is underneath the mesh so we can put it in a socket. And for the sword blueprint, or for the sword static mesh, we're going to actually use the sword that we just brought in. So for me, that would be right here. So I'll click on that and then click this button here. And as you see, the sword is massive. So first thing is, let's put the sword in the correct socket. So right above the static mesh, you'll see this socket thing. And if you press the folder with the magnifying glass, you'll see that all your like bones come up. And you can find your right hand socket. It should be at the top, to be honest. And now we know that the sword is in his right hand. So now we can size this sword up, and we can rotate it and make it, how it's supposed to be. So let's go ahead and size the sword up. And for me, I'm going to take off my snapping so that I can size it correctly. So size it up. And then we're going to rotate it as well. So for me, I think I need to rotate it this way. Size it down a little bit. And then drop it down a little bit. No, not that much. Let's take off the snap and drop it in his hand. Just like that. So now, when you compile and save, the sword's going to be attached to his hand. That socket that we just made. So that's perfect. Now what we need to do is we need to add the gun in his hand just like that. So under mesh, what we're going to do is add another static mesh. And if you have this problem where it says the ice sword, don't worry. You can add that, but we're going to call this one gun. And we're going to change that static mesh. So change it to your gun static mesh. And again, you're going to notice that it's gigantic. So first things first is let's go ahead and parent it to the right hand socket so we know what it looks like. And then we're going to resize it down really small. Okay. Now for the gun, you might not be able to get the pose or the gun accurate until you change your character's pose, which that's what we're about to do in a second. So let's kind of get it in a right spot, like kind of right. Something like that, right? But in order to see it correctly, let's change his pose. So his pose right now, he's using an animation blueprint. Let's use an animation asset. And the animation that we want to play is the gun, right? So now we can take this gun and put it right where it's supposed to be. So in order for him to stop moving though, click on the mesh and press pause animations. So it would be under advanced and then pause animation. Alright, now let's move this gun to where it's supposed to be. It might need to be a little bit smaller, but that might be right. Oh, no, needs more rotation. So once you get this right, you know, this will be pretty good for the game. All we have to do now is set the code up so that these weapons work with our switching of the states. So forgive me that this is taking me a second here. But I just wanted to be right. Now, I advise you in your game, take as long as you need to get this right, because this is really important when it comes to the game and how it plays. Like, you want your character to look nice when they're holding the gun. You don't want it to be kind of lame. You know what I'm saying? So take your time when you do this and line it up correctly. Now for me, in this example, I'm going to say that's cool. I'm going to click back on my mesh and unpause the animations just to make sure it looks alright. And it looks alright to me. You know, even though the gun is clipping through his arm, that's okay. Alright, so now we've got the gun and he's got the sword in his hand. He's got a lot of weapons going on there. Let's go ahead and start writing the code. First thing we need to do though is for your gun and your sword, click on the mesh over here. Scroll all the way down and we're going to set it, the visibility, turn that off for both of them. Alright, so now he should have nothing in his hand again. And then we're about to set his animation blueprint to the right one. So click back on your mesh, use animation blueprint, and I think it's using the correct one. Perfect. Alright, cool. That's step one. Now we've got the weapons in his hand. Now what we have to do is go into our event graph. And last time what we did is we set up a button where he could switch states. And so if he switches states, each time it's just going to add one to the selection. And the selection is basically telling which state to go to, 0, 1, or 2. So after it tells it which state to go into, these are the conditions for the state. So in the first state, they have the gun, but they don't have the sword. The second state, they have the gun, and they don't have the gun, and they do have the sword. And in the third state, they don't have either. So what we're going to do now is we're going to tweak this code, because we don't really have to do too much code, but we're going to turn these into functions right here. So the way that we'll do that is you can add a function on the left hand side. So the first function that we're going to add is going to be this one, hasGun. So we'll call this function hasGun. And when they have the gun, what we need to do is just take this code right here and just copy and paste it there. So we want to set the gun to true, set the sword to false, but also here what we need to do is drag off your gun and set the visibility. So after it has the gun, we need to set the visibility of the gun to true. So there. And then what you would also want to do is, just to be thorough, come and set the visibility of your sword to false so that it's not visible. Now, it should already be false, but it's okay. We're just going to keep it false. So that's what's going to show your gun when you have the gun. Cool. Now we need to write another function for has the sword. So click plus on the function and we'll say has sword. And same thing, just take it from your event graph, copy and paste, copy, and whoops. What did I just do? Oh. Okay, paste it here on your has sword, copy, and paste. Alright, paste it here. And then same thing, we need to set the visibility of both of these here. So for the gun, we'll drag it off and we'll say set the visibility. And this one we want it to be false this time. But for the sword, we want the visibility to be true. So drag off the sword and we'll say set visibility. And we'll put true. Compile and save. Now what's going to happen, oh, we need to do one more function. And then we can say has nothing. Alright, and so for has nothing, we can just take this code here, copy, and paste it. And again, we'll set the visibility of everything this time to nothing, or not visible. So drag the gun, set the gun to not visible, copy and paste that visibility one, and we'll use the sword on this one. Bop, bop, and it's not visible. Perfect. Last thing we need to do is replace these with the functions that we just made. So the top one, has gun, let's go ahead and grab out our has gun function, plug that right in. Second one, has sword, drag off your has sword function, and plug that in. And the third one, and the default, we need to have nothing. So drag in your has nothing function, bop, and plug that into both of those. Alright, so let's just test everything out to make sure everything's working still. Save everything and let's just test it out. So when he presses tab, I suppose, he has his gun and he's walking with his gun. Obviously I gotta fix mine. That's why I said spend a lot of time on this. Then you press tab again and he has his sword and he's walking with his sword. Press tab again and he has nothing. So it is working out for us. Perfect. I'm gonna fix the gun and then I'm not gonna make y'all wait through that, but I'll fix the gun off screen here and then we're gonna move to the next part. Alright, so my gun should be fixed now. It's a little bit better, you know what I'm saying? Now what we need to do is we need to set up a button for him to fire and for him to, you know, I guess attack with the sword. I don't think we downloaded any kind of fist animation, so we're not gonna like make him be able to fight with his fist, but you can also do that with this process here. So that's what we're about to do real quick. So let's go ahead and add in those, and I think I did download those animations. Let me double check. I got the aiming one. We'll use the aiming one for when he's shooting. But as far as sword and shield slice, I don't think I got that one. So no worries. So what you have to do is go and download that animation, like some kind of attack animation for him swinging the sword. I'll do that real quick again off screen, and then I'll meet you guys back here, and we'll go ahead and continue to move forward. Alright, so I got my sword and shield slash animation in here. So now what we need to do is set up a button for them to attack. And for me, it's going to be the left mouse button. So find the folder that says input, go into actions, and we're going to right click and we're going to make a new input action. And this one's going to be called For me, attack or get 'em or something like that. I'm gonna keep it cool. We'll just call it attack. All right. For your one folder back, click on this one, and we're gonna set up the mapping for the attack. So find your attack right here, and then for me, like I said, it's gonna be left mouse button. So click that and left mouse button. And if you're playing with a controller, it could be something else. You can add that controller support. But I'll do that later. Cool. So now we've got that button down. Now what we need to do is, there's a few ways that we can do this, right? So you can go back to his animation blueprint. So find the animation blueprint. Let's make sure that it has a slot. So this slot right here is very important because we might need this to play some animation montages. And I'll show you that in a second if we need it. But let's go into our state machine. So in the sword state, we should have like a certain attack that happens only from the sword state. So if attack is true from the sword state, he should be able to go into his sword attack. So this is how you could set it up in your state machine. You could just add a new state. So we'll call this one sword attack. Alright, and this will only be true if he is attacking. So compile and save. So we need to have a new variable that says is attacking true. So attacking question mark, and compile and save that. So I added a new variable there. Next thing we need to do is go here and add that same variable here. So we'll say attacking question mark, and we need to make sure that those are set up and linked correctly. The way we'll do that is in our event graph for our animation blueprint. At the end, drag off the variable we just created, set attacking, and then drag off from your third person character, and we're going to look for attacking. So type in attacking, and we're going to get attacking. Connect both of those up, and now that's good. So every time you are attacking now, it will register that you're attacking. So on the third person character here, in the event graph, we can actually set up that attack. So right click and say attack, and you're looking for the enhanced action input right here. Now I always go on started because this means when you press the button. So when he does attack, we need to check and see which selection is true. So basically what we'll do is say a branch, and if selection, so drag off your selection. So we've got 0, 1, and 2. The default is going to be 2. Don't worry about that one. So if it is on 2, so if the selection is equal to 2, which is this option right here, then we want them to do nothing. So if make this number 2 and say if that's true, do nothing. But if it's false, we need to go into another branch, and we need to see if that selection is equal to something else. We could say equal to, this time if it's equal to 0, we need to make sure that the gun is doing what it's doing. So if it's equal to 0 and that's true, then we want to set attacking to true. And in this case, we'll set up the gun in a moment. But if it's false, we need to do one more branch, and we need to see if it's equal to 1. So now we're checking to see which state is active. And if our gun state is active, we'll set it to attacking. If our sword state is active, true, then we'll also set it to attacking. Now, if it goes through all of those checks and none of those are true, it's not going to do anything. So, first thing first is let's make sure that our attacking is set up in our animation blueprint once more. So go back to your state machine, and since we have the sword attack, let's put our animation that we got for our sword attack. So for me, that would be like, I think it's this one, and I probably got another one too. But we'll just use this one. It's okay. Bow. Plug that in, and we need to set up the condition. And the condition will be if attacking is true. So plug that right on in. And if attacking is not true, they can go back to the sword state. So drag off attacking and say not. Oops. Not that one. I used the not boolean. I think you can use that one too, but. So there you go. So this is saying if they go into the sword state and they press attack, or whenever attacking is true, it's going to set it's going to play that animation basically. So let's go do the same thing for the gun state, and let's set up the gun attack. So add a new state called gun attack, and same thing, we're just going to put the condition as attacking and not attacking. Cool. Alright. And the gun attack, for me, I had one that's like firing or shooting or something like that. There we go. Firing. Compile and save. Alright, almost done. So basically we got the conditions set up, we've got the animations in there, but we don't have the buttons set up. Oh, actually we do have the buttons set up. So let's try it out, I guess. Let's test out everything. And if it doesn't work, we'll attack it another way. So, when I'm pressing attack right now, it does nothing. However, when I switch my state to the gun and I press attack, it does like my gun, like it shoots the aiming. Now the problem is we didn't tell them to come out of the attacking. So what we need to do is figure out how long each animation is, and then set a delay, and then set attacking to false. So what we'll do here is let's figure out 0. Our 0 state has gun. So when he has the gun, that firing animation is very short. Let's double click into it to see how long it lasts. It only lasts here, what does it say? You can pause it. So we got about 8 frames here, and it's moving 30 frames per second. Alright, so for this one we're going to put a delay of like 0.2, 0.3, and then set attacking to false. Wow. And this one we need to figure out, what is this? 1, so it has sword. So that sword and shield slash one that I just added in there. This one. Play. This is a whole, what, 30 frames at 30 frames per second, so it's a whole second. So let's put a delay of 1 second here. and then we'll set attacking to false. Now this way we should be able to come out of our animation. So let's check that out. When we press play, and so every time you shoot, he's gonna pow, 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 pow. All right. The only thing is that you can see that when we're shooting, he's like gliding. No worries. Let's make sure the sword works too. Same thing. When he's attacking, he's gliding, and we don't want that. What you want most times is you want him to just stand still when he's attacking. So let's set that up as well before we move on to the last part of this. So when attacking is true, we need to have his character movement stand still. Now, to get this clean, you could turn this into a function again. But for time purposes, I'm not going to do that right now. We're just going to freeze his character movement. So after this first set attacking to true, drag this back. So this is like the first one on selection 0, which for me that's has gun. What we want to do is we want to get his character movement over here. Disable movement. And then at the end of this, you want to get from the character movement set movement mode to walking. So there will be an option that says walking, just set it to walking. Not nav mesh walking, just walking. Nav mesh walking would be for an AI. Alright, boom, boom. And then for the bottom one, you need to do something similar. Actually, the exact same thing. So you just copy and paste it. Copy. And right after attacking is true, that's where you want to paste it. So disable character movement. And then at the end of that, set movement mode, copy and paste to walking. And make sure you hook up the target. Compile and save. Now this should eliminate that problem of him gliding. So let's go ahead and check that out. Press play. Alright, walking around normal, attacking can't do anything. Got my gun out, attack, attack, attack. Perfect. Alright, and then sword, same thing. Cool. Alright, so everything is good now. All we need to do now is make sure that our sword can hit things in the world, which I think it already can. Let's go ahead and test that out. Switch to your sword, go over to these blue things, attack them. Yeah, the sword can already hit things in the world. So the sword can affect anything that has physics turned on, and I'll show you that. But the gun doesn't even have bullets. So we need to go ahead and set up the bullets real quick, and then we can make sure that our sword and our gun affect things in our world. Alright, so before we move on, let's go ahead and set up the bullet so that we can shoot from our gun. So real quick, this is not going to take long. Let's go to our assets folder, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it bullets. And inside this folder, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to say blueprint class actor, and I'm going to call this my bullet underscore BP. And inside of here, what we're going to do is add a static mesh. And this is going to be the bullet. I'm just going to call it bull for now. And this would be a sphere. Now, you can get a real bullet in here if you wanted to. But for this example, I'm just going to use a sphere. Yeah, we'll make it small so you can't really see it. You'll see it, but you won't be able to see that it's I mean, in the gameplay, you won't really care. So anyways, add a sphere collision around this sphere, and this will actually be what hits everything. So our sphere collision will be the one that tells our bullet, you know, what it's hit, and we can put all kinds of data in that. And I kind of want my sphere collision to be a little bit more tighter around my bullet, like that. Perfect. Alright, so next thing you need to do for your bullet, let's add projectile movement. And then this one, what we need to do is say how fast you want it to move. For this example, I'm going to say like 1,000 or 1,500 is good, because you don't want it to be going too slow. It's a bullet. But I want you all to see it. The other thing is the project gravity scale. Because it's a bullet, I'm going to set mine on 0. Now, in real games, like if you're doing a first-person shooter or something that has like realistic bullets and stuff like that, then you might want to put that project gravity scale on something, because what that does is as the farther the bullet goes, it'll drop down to the ground. So if you put it on 0, it's never going to drop down to the ground. It'll just keep on going in whatever direction that you shoot it. And for me, that's what I want. Anyways, last thing, you want to make sure it's moving in the X direction here. So this is the X direction, and Y is 0, Z is 0. And that's cool for me. Compile and save. So what we need to do is make sure that when he's firing, back in our third person character blueprint, it says when he has the gun, so that's our 0 selection. When that's true, we need to set attacking, disable movement, delay, and then, you know, make a move again. Before we do the delay, let's do something else. Let's spawn actor from class. Spawn actor from class. And the actor that we, or the class that we want, is the bullet that we just set up. So type in bullet BP. You can't go forward without choosing a spawn transform. So compile and save. Go back to your viewport. And what we need to do is let's set up a spawn transform. So click on your mesh. Let's get them in posing like this. Let's make the gun visible. So click visible. And now let's add an arrow to the scene here. And this arrow, as you see, is pointing up. That's not what we want. We want it pointing the direction that the gun is. So I'm just going to move mine 90 degrees. Bop. Right. And then I'm going to move it right at the tip of the gun. So let's go ahead and move it right at the tip of the gun. You can use an arrow or a scene component. It does the same thing, or we can make it do the same thing in this case. So I'm going to make my arrow come from right here. Bop. Cool. So that's where my bullet will come from. Compile and save. The arrow is in the world. Alright, perfect. Now, what we need to do is... Wait, why that turned invisible? There we go. You could turn your gun back visible, turn your dude back into his regular animation. So come up here to animation mode, use animation blueprint, bow, compile, save. The reason why it's sent an error is because in our event graph, we haven't set up a spawn transform. So take that arrow that you just made, drag it on, and say get transform. And see, here's all the different things you can get. So what we need is the location, and we can say relative location. But I like to say, I'm going to say world location. So here what we'll do is world location, get world location, and we may need the rotation as well, but right click on your spawn transform, split it up, and for the location, bop, plug that right on in. And for the arrow rotation, let's just say get rotation. Get rotation. Get world rotation and plug that in. Alright, cool. So it's going to spawn that bullet from that arrow. Let's test that out to make sure that works. So tab, switch into my gun mode. So what's happening is, alright, so he's spawning the bullet, but he's spawning the bullet immediately when you click. We need a delay to happen for when he spawns that. So I think what will happen is, let's move all of that after the delay. So just unhook that there. Take this and move it after this delay. So let's move this delay over. Connect it up here. And before we set attacking to false, let's go ahead and make that bullet spawn. Let's see how that looks. And if that looks a little weird, what we're going to have to do is break that delay down into pieces. So I'll show you how to do that. But let's test that out. Compile, save, play, pull out my gun. There we go. Now, I told you that my bullet is big for a reason. And the reason why my bullet is big is so that we can see it. Because I'm going to make it do some things here in a moment. So, now that you got that, let's move on to the last and final step of this tutorial, because I know it's getting pretty long. Make sure you save all, but we need to make sure that our bullet now can shoot things that are physical objects in the world. But I don't think you can see it with these cubes because we didn't put aiming on our gun yet. If I stack the cubes up, you'll probably be able to see it. Let's go ahead and stack these cubes. Alright. I'll save. Pull out my gun. There you go. So the bullet already affects everything in the world. But what if you have something like, what if you pull in an asset? Like you go to, download an asset and you pull it in. So for me, what I've done here is, let's see, Mega Scans, 3D assets. I downloaded this little bottle from Quixel. And let's put this bottle into my world. Let's put it over here on this thing. And I'm going to make it bigger, obviously. Because this is just, like I said, for testing. Boop. We'll put a few of them there. But before we duplicate them, we need to set the settings on this bottle. So first, come over here to the static mesh component and double click on your static mesh. And we need to make sure that this has some kind of collision on it already. So come down here to collision, and then let's just go ahead and apply a simple collision to it right here. So now it has a simple collision on it. You can see it right here. It's kind of going through the bottle. It's okay. It's all good. You can take this and say simple as complex and then do that, but we can't do simple as complex for what we're doing. We just need to use project default and just make sure it has like a simple little collision. If you're not happy with that, you can remove it and add whatever kind of collision you want here. But I'm good with that. The next thing that we need to do for this bottle is, let's close that down, and you'll find it on this side over here. So physics right here, you can say simulate physics. Okay. Now that that's on, a lot of things can happen. You can change the mass and all these different things about it. But what that should do is allow me to it should allow me to affect it in my world. So let's go ahead and put a whole bunch of them there. Let's play. Let's pull out of our gun. Let's shoot over there. Bop, bop. Yeah, this is like a carnival game. All right, cool. So that's literally what I wanted to accomplish today. I wanted to show you how to set up physics on all your little assets out here. You can do physics to any asset as long as it has simple collision on it. Um, you can make anything have physics in your world, and your bullet can affect it. That's how you set up your bullet. That's how you set up the gun. The sword can affect it as well. I thank you all for joining me, but that is where we're going to end it today. If you have any questions, drop it in the comments, or if you have any suggestions for new or future tutorials, let me know, and I'll show you how to do whatever I know how to do. So thanks for joining me, but I'll holla at you on the next one. Peace.